So today, what I want to talk about is the process and strategies for releasing unreleased mortgages or deeds of trust. So a common scenario that we see with our clients is they put a property under contract, they open escrow, and then the escrow agent comes back and states, well, wait a minute, there's a deed of trust out there that needs to be paid off to close. And so our client, the buyer, goes to the seller and states, what's the status of this lien, this mortgage deed of trust? Why hasn't it been paid off? Why is it still showing? And the seller explains, oh, well, I paid that off 5 years ago. And for whatever reason, the lender didn't release the mortgage or deed of trust. Well, now the title company has to go to the lender or the mortgage company or the servicer of the loan and basically say, where's the release document? And the mortgage or servicer doesn't really seem to care. And the lender has no interest in dealing with this because it's not part of their portfolio anymore. It's been paid off. So why do they care about an unreleased deed of trust or an unreleased mortgage? They don't really care. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, we can't find it, or it will take, it's going to take 30 days to research this and try to figure it out. And of course, you want to close escrow. You don't want to spend 30 days while some lender who should have released already is trying to search the records and slow playing you on releasing the lien against the property. So I want to talk just a little bit about some strategies here in Arizona and that I'm aware of even outside of Arizona that can be utilized to release that mortgage or deed of trust that is still lingering out there, even though it shouldn't be. So there's one thing to go and demand a release. So in Arizona, if I go to a lender and I explain we represent the seller or maybe even the buyer, and it's our understanding that the mortgage deed of trust has been released and or the underlying loan that's secured by the mortgage and deed of trust has been paid off, but you haven't released the mortgage or deed of trust. And therefore we need it released in order to close escrow. And I send that letter off to the lender. The lender here in Arizona and in most states has basically 30 days in which to respond and provide a release of the mortgage or deed of trust. Well, 30 days is a long time, which is why, of course, the lender's saying, oh, it'll take 30 days to research. And they kind of give you the runaround and the slow play on that. So another strategy that we employ, and it's a really good strategy, and it works really well, is instead of in addition to demanding a release, we demand a payoff. In Arizona, the law provides that if a deed of trust or a mortgage is still of record, then the beneficiary, or in the case of a mortgage, the mortgagor, strike that, the mortgagee, the beneficiary of the deed of trust, which means the lender of the deed of trust, and the mortgagee of the mortgage have to provide a payoff within 14 days of the request. There's also federal law to that effect, which is 10 business days, which is essentially 14 calendar days. And if they don't, then they're subject to damages and potentially an award of attorney's fees for failing to provide the payoff. Well, now you kind of put that lender in a bind because, hey, your deed of trust is still of record or your mortgage is still of record. And because of that, you have certain legal obligations. You may have been paid off, but if you claim that you aren't, then give us the payoff. If you've been paid off, then give us a payoff and it will reflect zero and we can still close escrow. But you have to abide by the law and you have to provide that payoff within a 14-day period. So now you've taken what is generally a 30-day period to get a release, and you've accelerated it to 14 days because a $0 payoff is just as good as a release to the title company. So a lot of times what the lender will do is they'll say, okay, we'll just give you a release of the mortgage. Well, that's good as well. So they release the mortgage or they release the deed of trust. But you have to send this letter the right way. And both under Arizona law, and I've worked with Arizona companies and Arizona residents to obtain releases of paid off mortgages and deeds of trust in other states. And those states are very similar to Arizona, which is this notice has to be sent by certified mail. You have to have a record that it was sent and, some form of tracking with the United States Postal Service in order for it to be valid and binding and comply with the statute. So it's very important that it is sent out that way. But in addition to sending it by certified mail, it should also be sent to every email, every fax number, even every address that you can find for the lender or for the servicer, because you want to make sure that this ends up in the right hands. And the letter is pretty strongly worded saying, hey, you've been paid off and you've not released. That's a violation of Arizona law. We demand that you release, and if you don't within 30 days, then you're going to suffer damages. And you're still your lien or your mortgage deed of trust is still of record, and because of that, you have certain duties and obligations, which is to also provide a payoff. So we want a payoff, and oh, by the way, now that's 14 days. So give us this payoff. If you don't, you're going to have damages. So you want to make sure that letter, the way it goes out, and with the language that's contained in it, you want to make sure that it ends up in the right hands, because a lot of times it'll end up with somebody who does not know what to do with it. But you want it to move up to a decision maker, somebody who has the ability to work outside of the box that these lenders create for their employees and make a rational decision to resolve the problem.
That raises, I think, an important question. And you mentioned the box, being able to find somebody to act outside of the box. We've all called our mortgage company. We've all called the bank, and we get the same person that we get every time, which is not that person, not somebody who can think out of the box or is authorized to be able to do that. And I don't know that there is a special lawyer hotline that allows lawyers to get to that box. So what is kind of a realistic, if somebody comes to you, and I know that you, Sean, have helped endless borrowers with just this problem, or real estate investors attempting to clear a lien of property that should have been cleared a long time ago. What is it what realistically is an appropriate amount of time for you to be able to work through and find that person who can work outside the box?
Well, it depends. If it's a servicer or a beneficiary that we've worked with before, we can accelerate the process because we already have done the legwork and, use the elbow grease to work up the chain of command in order to identify the right person who's outside that box and has that ability. For example, we've all heard of MERS, right? Mortgage Electronic Registration. They are basically a clearinghouse for mortgages and deeds of trust. So you list them as the beneficiary or as the mortgagee, so that every time that these securitized notes are conveyed to a new holder or to a new servicer, you don't have to record an assignment of deed of trust or assignment of mortgage in every county recorder's office where these mortgages and deeds of trust are recorded. And so you just simply provide a spreadsheet to MERS. MERS updates its records, and then they inform the borrower who that is. Well, MERS being listed as the mortgagee or beneficiary means that they do have the statutory requirements and obligations to provide that payoff. And, they are not allowed to simply say, well, call the servicer. Well, no, if you want to do that, then you need to execute an assignment of beneficial interest of the deed of trust or an assignment of the mortgage and record that and basically come off that document. But so long as you're listed on that document, you have to comply with Arizona law and you have to provide a payoff. Well, fortunately, we've worked with MERS and we have those, connections and people we can speak with. And there's other servicers who, we have those types of connections with that, we've utilized and can continue to utilize going forward.